Oh, wow. Hey, pura vida, mi gente. Much love and respect. Thank you for tuning in once again. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. And, our prayers go out for everybody in Jamaica. You know, hopefully they safe. And if you're in the path of the eye, take it serious and make sure you're safe. Hawa protect. America. Mundus Novus. Or that's what they say, right? The so-called new world. The so-called new world when we know it's the true old world. It's the true old world. So I had this little book, the link. I had this link for a while and wanted to go over it with you guys. I was gonna read a specific part of the book, but I was like, nah, let me just go a little further back in the book and let's just go over the whole thing. It seems they have an interesting you know, corroboration there. Things we've been researching. So, we always gotta dodge the hijack. We pull out the baby, so we're gonna go ahead into this book real quick. Let me go ahead and get it ready. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Going back to our reading, okay? It's Monday. Back to class. The class is in session. So this book is called The American Indian. Who is he? By G. Whitfield Ray. By Indian adoption, it says Wayampangapling Ithma, late explorer to the government of Bolivia, author of Through Five Republics on Horseback, with forward by Mete Wayob, chief of the chiefs of the Indian Council Fire. All right, that's what we're gonna get into. We're gonna go belly flop chapter 3. Actually go to chapter 2. Here we go. Page 28, chapter 2. So it says here, chapter 2, unveiling a strange land. A strange land, right? They had lost touch with the true old world, with the terrestrial paradise on purpose. Great Spirit makes sure that. The hidden ones, right? While the planets sang together, Dastahajak, at this old world's birth, beauty loosed her golden feathers, wings her way to earth. Hither, thither, free, she rambled over sea and land. Aimlessly, she gaily wandered too far, Carib's strand. Loaded with honors galore, the admiral of the ocean seas once more sailed westward, bearing letters of great greetings to the Oriental potentates he surely expected to meet. So what they're talking about is, Columbus thought, or not thought, but he knew. He knew he was coming to India Superior, right? The real Orient, the real East, the true old world, right? He was going to meet the Grand Khan and he's going to Cathay and all that. Yeah, he wasn't lost. He met Indians in 1470 in Ireland. He knew about the stories of Atlantis and all that. Henry the Navigator is his great uncle. Salvador Fernandez Sarco, right? So he knew where he was going. So, like it says here, he was ready to meet the Oriental potentates. He surely expected to meet the Mare Tenebrosum. No longer was the sea of darkness and of terror. It was now a shining silver trail. In every real sense, Columbus had been its discoverer. Dodge the hijack. You can't discover a place that has millions of people already. It makes no sense. Think logically. The second arrival of the Spaniards was not to be only a chance visit as the probably accidental landing. Probably. There you go. At least he's admitting, they don't know. Landing of the Norsemen had been centuries previously in more northern latitudes. Well, that's definitely, we can definitely verify that, back and forth. What's a Norseman? Who the so-called Vikings? What's a Danite? So sorty. This time the country was to be conquered as well as discovered. The natives were to be disposed of their princely heritage. Okay? Your princely heritage. Princely heritage. When Guanahani, or the Bahamas, right, became holy savior, it became the white man's possession or Europeans' possession, so-called white man. Columbus was a so-called black man, and most of his crew were all black folks from Europe. We're gonna get the drop fully with all the context. No sugarcoating. Apparently, it was not destined to be the perpetual inheritance of its original owners. When bearded aliens found the Caribs, the race died, yeah, or enslaved, right? Reclassified as well. The ancient law of life began to function. The weak gave place to the strong. Out of an unknown sphere had they emerged, but only to be annihilated, for the magic power of the bearded gods was irresistible. Upon this second voyage to the Orient, there were carried piles of slave chains. Upon what? 500 of the natives, huh? 500 of the natives, what? Became what? Piles of slave chains. 500 of the natives, not Africans, right? Whose color was that of the devil, huh? The color of the devil, the copper color is the color of the devil, huh? Wow. Were captured and manacled. They were what? Captured, right? Who? American Indians, not Africans. And this little moment right here, 500 alone right here, loads were forced on them and gold hunts were commenced. Imagine the deep dismay of those trusting souls when they learned, as they did all too soon, that their gods had feet of clay and hearts of brass. From these Edenic islands, okay? Edenic islands, islands of Eden, from these islands of Eden, in case you don't understand what they're saying right there, from these islands of Eden, terrestrial paradise, right? Of aromatic fragrance and beauty superb, Spanish ships were to transport them from their ancient fatherland, their ancient fatherland, right? Nowhere else. He didn't say they came from Asia, right? To European slave marts. Oh, Middle Passage the other way around, right? American Indians getting enslaved, sold in the European slave marts, right? We're not talking about Africans. How many accounts? Check out my Real Slave Straight playlist. Welcome, welcome. Hope you guys enjoying the reading. Thank you for tuning in again. Appreciate everybody that's here. So we got American Indians being, going through a Middle Passage, getting taken from their fatherland and motherland, grandma land, to European slave marts where they were helpless as a beetle impaled on a needle. Huh. Helpless as a beetle impaled on a needle. Give me a beat. Give me a beat. The first slave ship to carry these carrots was called Jesus. Jesus. Huh. Really? See, I kind of know the background of what they're saying here. They don't have sources, right? But we kind of understand the background, right? And so they were carrying these American Indians, huh? The other way around, you see, some people grab that ship name and they try to use it for African narratives, right? Wow. From her top mast above a mountain of snowy canvas floated the red and gold banner of Castile, and above this a crucifix was mounted, while a picture of Our Lady of Sorrows was painted on the ballooning mainsail. Another Spanish ship bore the name Cinco Llagas, 5 wounds, suggesting the 5 wounds of Jesus. Its sails were fanned by the wings of the Holy Ghost. As soon as the onrushing stream of European civilization, which was then the dawning on the world, was turned westward, the natives were doomed. For them, 2 or 3 decades of inhuman treatment remained. For the others later discovered there was a longer night of hopeless misery before their final extinction. Uh-oh, dodge the hijack. You mean their enslavement, relocation, conquest, reclassification, paper genocide, murder? The West Indian islands were thickly populated when Columbus Sarko, right, found them. Thickly populated. Welcome, welcome. Today, the inhabitants are all imported Africans. Dodge the hijack. Ooh, yo, man, I told you got to be ready for the hijacks. And of course, like I said, he got no sources. So what is he saying? Let's try to interpret that for those who are still not hip with the real history, right? He say, not today. All I see is black folks. So in his hijack mind, remember, this is a more modern book. This ain't an old book. His modern 1900s mind. Anybody dark skin or that looks a certain way to him is from West Africa, you know? When that's what the Caribs look like. That's what the Arawak people look like. That's what a lot of the Taíno look like. A lot of the people in South America, the Lucayans. We got the primary sources already describing these people, right? We've shown it in the last 8 years. Catch up. So today, all the inhabitants are literally melanated folks, is what he's trying to say. So that's why he's calling them Africans. It couldn't be them. They went extinct, just like the Mayas went extinct, right? Everybody went extinct. You're still here, though. The Caribs have long been extinct, he said. You see? He's repeating it. The more he repeats it, the more people will start believing it. 25 years after the conquest, all the natives of eastern Brazil also had melted away. Melted. They just vanished. They just into thin air. They just melted. They just melted away. Melted. Like chocolate melts, you know, like melted. Just And as early as 1580, 10,000 African slaves had been imported. Oh yeah, really, right. Show me the sources, show me the ships. Stop making things up now, man. You were doing good, but now you're making things up. We already saw it, and you really said already in the beginning what they were doing. They were taking Indians to Europe, right? That we can verify, we have verified. Not 10,000 Africans, definitely not. That's not historical. Show me 10,000 Africans. Show me at least like, let me see, 500. Yeah. From the second voyage of the Spaniards, we date the beginning of what Charles Kingsley describes as cruelties and miseries unexampled in the history of Christendom, or perhaps on earth, save in the conquest of Sennacherib or Genghis Khan or Salamaneza against the Israelites. You mean like a Tartan? You mean an Assyrian military commander? That's what a Tartan is. And the Assyrians were the people like this Genghis Khan and Georgi Danilovich. You mean? Yeah. Literally millions of the Aborigines perished from the rigor of the forced labor of the mines. They just perished, right? Again, you see the wording. They melted away, extinct. They perished. Are you sure you didn't enslave a lot of them, send them somewhere else, reclassify them, start calling them Africans? Are you sure you didn't do that? You perished them, huh? They perished from the forced labor of the mines, and this continued absolutely unchecked until 1537. So way before these, Like, look at the years. We already got the drop, right? When we read all these stories and what they were doing in those years to the American Indians from actual primary sources, right? De las Casas and all the others, Columbus himself, right? When the oft-repeated wail, ni flaca, we are also human, grew so loud that it sounded across the seas and came to the ears of the Pope, and by special papal bull he declared Indians are human beings with souls susceptible to conversion. Oh, oh, so he said, hey, second thought, guys. Okay, they have souls, you can convert them now. Yeah, after they had, enslaved, murdered many, many. Such was the sequence of events, but all of this is now the limbo of the forgotten past. Oh, it's now in the past, huh? While Columbus was further exploring the new coast, inquiring and seeking for gold, another Spanish ship arrived, which he employed as the first mail boat on its return to Europe. It is significant that the first letter ever written from the New World, so-called New World, right, to the Old was penned by the admiral himself from Jamaica. All right, from Jamaica, history. That's why I say prayers go out to Jamaica. There's a lot of history there with the people and the location, right? Whereof Anaxagoras reads, he who possesses it, gold, does what he will in this life. This is supposedly Sarko, right? Columbus, and nay, it even enables him to draw souls from purgatory to heaven. Had Columbus only suspected it, he had much more stupendous news to send home than data about birds and trees or even gold. Any tourist could write of such. He had lifted the veil that had been over 3/4 of the world. The veil, meaning it's not that they didn't know, there was a veil. They had forgotten, they couldn't see, they couldn't remember. A veil. But they knew there was a fourth part of the world, the four corners. They always said it, the fourth world, the four continents in ancient texts. They always knew. So-called Atlantis, so-called Hesperides, Antilla, Greater Ireland, India Superior, Lemuria, what you want to call it. While the search for gold was progressing, yet another ship landed, bearing news that the admiral was to be arrested and sent over his Atlantic back to Spain, bound in ignominious chains. That really happened, 1504. He went back in chains after his fourth expedition. They did him wrong after everything he did, because he was trying to be a king, and an emperor over here had his own plans. He wasn't following him and his son. They were murdering Indians too. The clerics had succeeded, but he was saved from inquisition. Columbus died poor and neglected, unaware of the fact that to him had been given the incomparable honor of discovering half a world, therefore unknown. Strange, Dutch the hijack, you can't, again, discover a place that has millions of people already. Strange that glory and neglect should often go hand in hand. As we write, his last lineal descendant had been murdered in war-torn Spain. In 1513, the intrepid Balboa, one of the newcomers, strolled a few miles inland, and to his consternation and wonder beheld through the opalescent haze another sea. This is when Balboa, walked through the parts of Panama, Costa Rica, and he went to the other side. And he got to the Pacific Ocean, so that's the other sea. The expanse of waters which his eyes gazed upon from that peak in Darien, right, again in Panama, he called the South Sea. It was a natural inference on his part because that point of land from which he looked faced the south. When in the name of God and the Pope and the regnant powers of Spain, Balboa, with sword uplifted, took possession of it and all its coasts to all eternity, he showed himself to be a true Iberian. A true what? Iberian. They didn't say a white man, huh? Iberian. What do we know about these Iberians from the 1500s? Huh? What do we know about these Iberians? We're not gonna play it dumb and sugarcoat this. This is so-called black man right here. Yeah. The dark swarthy Iberians. Spanish, so-called Portuguese Spanish. Yeah. Those were great days when swelling words of vanity were the vogue. Balboa must have been sorely perplexed by this strange discovery, where he not unnaturally expected Asia to extend indefinitely over the horizon to Europe. He had found more sea. What are they saying? They're saying, yo, they thought they were in so-called Asia. They knew they were, but they just pictured their version of Asia, right? Did an inkling of the truth cross his mind? Was he, after all, only on one of the many islands guarding the coast of the Orient? Was Columbus in error in thinking that Cuba was the kingdom of Japan? Sipango, Sipango, Japango, Pan. Remember, Pan has to do with ancient America. Remember the book Researches into the Lost History of America. All these Greek legends, all this stuff. Pan. That's why the rising sun, right? The flag of Japan is the rising, where to them is the east, the sacred land, the ancient land. Pan. They took the name Sipango, named it Japan there because of that. Shout out to Drop. Can't Drop. Could the boundless expanse of waters, which he now gazed upon with such rapt wonder, be the sea reported to lie between China and Japan? Was the continent of spices still further westward across those reaches whose bounds he was unable to scan? Those are questions which no man now may answer. 27 years after the first landing of Columbus Magellan, a Portuguese Sephardic Jew, sailing southward in the Atlantic, rounded the land which Columbus had discovered and sailed into the sea Balboa had sighted. There are no charts for ships that follow dreams. To his amazement, he discovered that the South Sea of Balboa was not a sea, but an ocean, the largest body of water on this planet. The Pacific Ocean covers a greater area of the surface of the earth than do all continental lands and islands combined. That daring mariner sailed his painted ships on that painted ocean, studded with islands innumerable, inhabited by lotus eaters, a veritable dolce far niente. All right, Eden, 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 the terrestrial paradise, the fairyland of all creation. All right, we're just talking about the Americas, okay? The name South Sea was seen to be a misnomer, for it extended indefinitely northward also, so it was altered to Pacific, and sea changed to ocean. Until that voyage, no European or Asian had ever suspected the existence of such a vast expanse of water as the Pacific proved to be. You know, we can definitely debate that. Many Asians knew of ancient America. There's maps, we know. We got future videos. Of course, I'm going to do video what everybody knows. There was ships from China coming here in the 1400s and all that. So, you know, there's a lot of migrations. This is the true old world. A lot of people, you know, we think just because they tell us, oh, there was nobody doing it and nobody knew, you know, we were supposed to believe them, right? We're supposed to believe the people who say that you come from apes, right? That you are evolving from an animal, and that you come from a certain place, and that somebody discovered a land where they had millions of people, but they cannot tell you who these people are. So they're talking about discovery and all that, right? So just something to think about. I'm just, you know, so definitely people was coming. So let's just, you know, touch the hijack on that. As an example in passing of how old expressions and oft-repeated but erroneous ideas cling to mankind, be it noted that the Hawaiian Islands, although distinctly in the Northern Hemisphere, are still referred to as South Sea Islands. It has been stated that Magellan detached America and gave it an independent existence, but that is only correct as regards the southern continent. His voyage around the world had not taken him into the extreme northern Pacific waters, and it was still believed that the newly found twin continents, listen, were connected with Asia in the north. You never know, guys. Maybe at that time it still was. It still was. There was more land connected to us from Asia. Like, this is Asia Major, right? They say Asia Minor. So where's Asia Major? India Superiors, right here. The three Indias, Emperor of the three Indias, Prester John. Oh, we're gonna remind you of that today again a little bit. So the old world was a unit. The old world was a unit. Continents were connected with Asia and North America, made up of 3 continents merging into one. It was therefore very natural to suppose that as Africa and Asia and Europe were connected, this new land would likewise be joined to the rest of the earth. The separate continent of Australia had not then been dreamed of, and an entirely unrelated portion of the world was beyond their conception. Incidentally, Magellan also discovered. So this is another little hijack here. We got to dodge the hijack because, you know, again, this is somebody's perspective right from. Let's see what year. Hold up. 1951, right? 1951. So remember, there's maps of Antarctica, right? There's maps of Antarctica without ice, ice-free, rivers, mountains, animals. There's old maps. A lot of them attached to South America. A lot of maps talking about Tierra del Fuego, or the land of fire. Even though South America is called that today, parts of the very tip of South America is Tierra del Fuego. That was the name on old maps of Antarctica. And not only that, but it also said Terra Santa. Terra Santa, the Holy Land. Huh. So what I'm saying is, yeah, they started discovering in modern times these people that they didn't know of all these places, right? But the ancient people knew all these places, right? Incidentally, Magellan also discovered that from the shores of the newly found land to the real India, they didn't even get their name India till the 1940s. You mean Hindustan, huh? It wasn't even called India. He's saying that, this author, 1951. You got to read what Magellan and all these people are saying in the primary sources. To the real India was a voyage of many weeks' duration, that the real Cathay was at least 8,000 miles from the imagined Cathay of Columbus. The imagined, huh? Cathay, Kata, Kata, like Yucatan, Yucatay, Catay, Catan. The Grand Khan, Grand Canyon, the Grand Canyon, Khan, Prester, the Grand Khan, the priest king. The terrestrial globe had increased to more than twice the proportions which cosmographers had dreamed it had. In those days, geographers must have become very much confused. The continent on which Columbus thought he had landed was still far distant. His long, terrible journey across the Sea of Darkness had been only 1/3 of the way to the land of his dreams. He never said he didn't make it. Himself, he made it. He found India superior. He knew where he was. He brought back the Indians to display them to the Pope, and they say, yep, you did good. Let's go invade. He never conceived of the existence of such an ocean as the Pacific. He lived and died in the belief that the islands which he had discovered were contiguous to the shores of Asia. You know, that's according to this guy, right? So we got to dodge the hijack. You're going to talk about Vespucci now, Americus Vespucci. They're going to even give him the fake name Americus because he was never called Americus. It's Amerigo, and that was translated back to his original language to Alberigo, which is Albert. That was his real name. This is the guy they say named America when we know that ancient word for America is indigenous to this place right here in the Americas. Amaracapana, Amaraca, Amerique, Amaru. All that is from here, okay? So it says Americus was a man of superior enlightenment. Oh, so sorry. It says in the meantime, Americus Vespucci, another Italian, was exploring the mainland to the south, which he rightly concluded was a continent. America was a man of superior enlightenment, and on his return to Europe, he wrote a graphic account of his explorations, stating that he had actually found a separate continent. His writing so captured the imaginations of his readers that the work was translated into German by Martin Wassenmüller. So, in my video, The Origin of the Name America, we talk about this guy who made one of the very first maps with the word America on South America. And so they try to say he relates it to America. It's a whole hijack. It's a whole hijack, yeah. And his enthusiasm over the wonderful exploits of the author being translated to German, doubtless over a glass of foam and brew, christened the newly found continent Americus. On a map naturally far from perfect, which he drew to illustrate the book, the name was first printed. So we read, actually, that Vespucci When the very first Spaniards who arrived in South America, they arrived in a place called Amaracapana in the Amaraca kingdom and all that. They knew the word. They brought that word back with them. That's what they did. They brought that word back with them and they named South America Amaraca because North America wasn't at first called America. It was just South America. On a map naturally far from perfect, which he drew to illustrate the book, the new name was first printed. Thus, the nameless world, nameless since its beginning, nameless to them, right, was designated America. See what I'm saying? You got to dodge the haja. They already had that name for themselves. They already had that name and many other names. Turtle Island, huh? This appellation was made in Germany in an obscure, dodge the hijack again. So the name America was, however, bestowed only upon the southern continent, was what I was just saying, right? Which was found to be connected by a narrow neck of land with the more northerly portion. Balboa had proved that America, this southern portion, was washed by a boundless sea on its western coast. The land north to the strait was still considered to be Asia. So listen, they're saying North America was still considered to be Asia. Spain had but little fancy for the bleak lands north of Mexico. There was no gold there ready to be appropriated. Notwithstanding Balboa's discovery of the Pacific, it was still believed that somewhere in the north the new land must abut on Asia. That was a certainty. How else account for the people Columbus had found dwelling there? Right? They're like asking, so how else would why would there be people there? Where would they come from, right? If everybody supposedly came out of Asia, according to what literally they go with their biblical tradition, then they go with the out of Africa traditions and science. So those are the two locations. Not knowing, understanding that Asia, like, including North America, that Asia Major, the farthest east, the farthest east. The then recently invented printing presses of Europe rolled out reams of newly invented paper, containing in dozen languages the marvelous story of our outer Asian shores, which were eagerly perused by all who could read, that met very few others than the clergy. A grateful people may yet call the northern continent Ericsson and the southern Columbus, as a perpetual memorial to their discoverers. Even if Leif Erikson was wafted here by contrary winds and Columbus thought that he had landed on the shores of India, he landed in India Superior. You get what I'm saying? He was never lost. Again, we know the back story of Columbus, the Sephardic Portuguese Jew. Both men blundered into fadeless immortality. So Leif Erikson, right, whose ancestor was Eric the Red, right? The Red, copper, Red man, huh? Who's the Red man, huh? Red. There's an ancient connection with Leif Erikson, his ancestor Erikson, and America. He's probably from America. Remember, in reverse. That's why they would come back and forth. They knew about the true old world, the Greater Ireland. This was Greater Ireland. Remember all the drop we've gone over, guys. If anybody was to cross the Atlantic, we got this from the most famous historian on navigation. Anybody was to cross the Atlantic would have to be from the Americas. He says that. He wrote that. We're going to get the drop again soon. So the names Indian and America are both accidents of history. You see how you got dodge the hijack big time, yo. Big time hijack right here, man. The names Indian and America are both accidents of history, but the latter will probably endure for a whole time. Dodge the hijack. Dodge the hijack. The coined word Amerind has now taken the place of American Indian and should be universally adopted. American Indian, not Native American, Native American Indian. All right, all indigenous to this land, all that, all that. But we had different names for ourselves, so you get it, every nation had his name, every clan, you know. A century and a half rolled by. In that time, every writer of history or fiction considered the northern land as being part of the great Asian continent. Why did they believe? What do you mean believe? What do you mean believe? and all its inhabitants as Oriental people. The Oriental, huh? Hundreds of old books containing accounts of those far eastern shores are still extant. This is what I was just saying, like Marco Polo. You guys don't understand. Marco Polo came to the Americas. They say they don't know where Marco Polo went when he went to the farthest east. It's like a mythical story. They haven't found it. Where he went and met the Grand Khan. We had temples of gold and stuff, just like they describe the Inca pyramids and a lot of the temples and the Mayas, all that. When the Spanish got here, they said it. During that time, the Cabbage, more Italians were sent from England. See, these are cryptos. I know the background behind the Cabbage. The cryptos, they have a different name. So-called Italians, these are all Iberian people, were sent from England and explored the coast of the northern land, which they regarded as Eastern territory. And whether Chinese or not, England took possession thereof. Meantime, in 1620, the Pilgrim Fathers settled on the northern coast, which for aught they knew might part of Mongolia, might be part. Why would they say that? For it was surely an extension of Asia. I told you, New England, right? They're saying, hey, we arrived in Asia, the promised land. They're pilgrims, right? I'm gonna tell you something very logical here. Yet people don't use their logic. What do pilgrims do, guys? What is a pilgrimage? If you don't know, let me just put it very simple. Pilgrims take pilgrimages, meaning they travel to holy places like a sacrifice, like an obligation, right? And in this case, for salvation as well, to survive, because they were being persecuted by the Catholics. A lot of these are cryptos, a lot of these are Muslim Moors, a lot of these so-called pilgrims or Puritans, right? So they're going on a pilgrimage. That's why they're pilgrims to a holy land. Where did they arrive? In the Americas, the Holy Land, right? They're like, we're going to Asia. Cartier left Europe and landed in Canada, but called it Lechine. Uh-oh. He called it what? The real Sinai? Remember that word China is Sinai. 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 S-I-N-A. Sinai. But called it Lechine, huh? He arrived in Canada and called it China? What do you mean? Why would they be so lost if they already knew about China? You guys understand like that China supposedly existed already for hundreds of years. So why would they be so lost and label it? In that 150 years of supposed relationship of America and its people to Asia, and its people had become deeply fixed in men's minds. Nothing had disturbed such belief. The true East, I'm trying to tell you. 5 generations of people drank it in as sacred tenet with their mother's milk, and thus it got into the blood. The old belief still persisted over 300 years later. 300 years, they said this was Asia? So, come on now. When President Jefferson ordered Lewis and Clark to cross the continent westward, he gave them letters to our consuls in Batavia, seemingly unaware of the fact that Batavia was 8,000 sea miles from America's west coast. Even today, 450 years since the discovery of America, our scientists still regard Asia and America as connected, though now they naively persuade themselves that their belief is not for geographical, but for ethnological reasons. This insistence is patently nothing more than the ghost of the old stubborn persuasion of pre-Magellan days. All right, that's what they're saying. They're making it up. They're making it up. But, okay, check it out, guys. The mythical Straits of Anion. Anion. Yo, again, shout out to Drug. The mythical Straits of Anion. When the great Venetian traveler Marco Polo returned from his eastern wanderings in 1295, he brought back for the use of geographers and future travelers a fund of information concerning Eastern Asia, which was to serve as the main source of such knowledge for the next 500 years. It was thus inevitable that as the wave of Spanish exploration swept across the newly discovered American continent, more than 2 centuries later, men should instinctively turn to his pages for information concerning that mystic land of Cathay. They never really found it. The mythical land which it was now conceived had been so nearly reached by these new travelers. They did reach it. As Cortez and his followers pushed forward, however, into the vast regions which lay to the north and west of their first lands of entry into the continent, and found little save semi-naked savages, to hijack, where Oriental splendor and civilization were looked for. The first picture gradually faded away, and it was at length realized that more explorations must take place upon and around Balboa's new ocean before the coveted land of Kublai Khan and his descendants could be attained. But before the passing of his dream, the belief that the Chinese Empire had been nearly reached had sufficed to fill the maps of the new continent with kingdoms, cities, rivers, and mountains borrowed from Marco Polo or other less well-known Eastern travelers. They're saying what? That people drew imaginary kingdoms on the map. See, this is a hijack right here. So this is a modern article, right? We're in the 1915 the Bulletin of the American Geographical Society, right? I'm just trying to show you that. Remember, we got a lot of drop on the three Indias and what Columbus really knew, and we got the whole drop, man. How they were saying that Indians from the Atlantic Ocean were being washed ashore in Europe, remember? From India. These were American Indians in ancient times, right? We got the whole drop before, right? The three, So they thought they had reached the Chinese Empire, so I guess they never reached it. So they put these in the maps, right? These were real buildings, real castles they really had, right? We dodged a hijack, we know. They destroyed a lot of this old world buildings, right? And the Americas, right? And a lot of it's still standing in our cities. It's still there. A lot of your government buildings are these ancient buildings, palaces, and all that. So they say supposedly they borrowed that from Marco Polo. Why would they borrow mythical stuff and a map that they're given as an official map to people who are exploring? And these were placed upon the blank spaces or fitted by eager cartographers to suit natural features described by returning voyagers. All right, so this is what I recommend you. Again, I said it the other day. Check out 432 The Drop Radio. Check out the playlist. He got Priest King, Prester John, and you get the whole drop on Anion and the three Indias and all that. Man, you like, listen, man. Listen, man. Yeah. How many episodes, man? This is 8 years of research. Come on now. Who's the Grand Khan? All right. Marco Polo. Anion, right? So what's the point of Marco Polo is that he actually wrote about reaching Anion, which is believed to have been inspired by the name of the same mythical strait of Anion. So Anion is a real place, guys. Anion, right? And it was where they call it the Bering Strait, right? All the old maps, as you see here, Anion. Look, Kivira, where all the gold is, the Straits of Anion. So if Marco Polo made it all the way here, you don't think he went into the Americas? And remember, this was all more connected and everything. Yeah. Look at that. Look, Sipango, Japan, right? Sipango, Cuba. Look, Terra. This is where you get. That is a good map. Drop it showing this. All right. So going back to the book, chapter 3, it says here, Mundus Novus, or so-called New World. So-called, right? If the books agree with the Quran, said the Caliph, they are superfluous. If they contradict it, they are damnable. In either case, destroy them. Not until 1648, when Deshnu sailed from east, was it discovered that the new land was an immense island. An immense island, huh? Like Atlantis, and was in no sense a portion of Asia. So now it's separated, and now in 1648 is when they really find it now, guys. Supposedly, that is not connected to Asia. So you're telling me before that they didn't know that was in Asia? I wanna remind you, Science. So where did camels originate? Where did camels originate, AI? Come on, AI. Camels originated in North America around 44 million years ago during the Eocene epoch, later migration. Okay. Oh, okay. They migrated across the what? Anion Bridge into Asia. Into Asia, right? So, is it just camels? Is it just camels? Check it out, guys. So look at the arrows, right? Into Asia, right? Into Asia, right? Now remember, imagine a time when there's more land here. The continents are different, the waters are different, land looks different. We got animals that originated in America. Remember, mammals, all that came out of here, the true old world, right? Camels, you thought camels was from over there, right? Horses. Where did horses originate? Where did horses originate, AI? Horses originated in North America over 55 million years ago, evolving from small, so okay. Horses originated in North America, right? So they went what? They migrated across the barren land, huh? Into Asia and Europe, into Asia. So who was the first horse riders? So what am I just, what's the point? What I'm showing you? Because we think it backwards, right? We're thinking they try to tell us Bering Strait, huh? Bering Strait, the spread of the horse. Yeah. So not till 1648, when Daphne sailed from the east, was it discovered that the new land was an immense island and was known as a portion of Asia. Simeon Devnuf. He was a Russian explorer, Siberian, the first European to sail through the Bering Strait, 80 years before Vitus Bering, even before the guy they named it after. Okay, that's what we're talking about. This was a vast surprise. Definitely, they was surprised. Listen, wait, what do you mean it's not connected anymore? Wait, what do you mean? That was always Asia. This was a vast surprise. Daphnos is the man who cut the Gordian knot and gave America an independent existence. Until his time, no one seems to have had the faintest idea that another continent had been discovered, although the name America had gradually been applied to the northern continent as well as to the southern. Right. So remember, if we got animals going that way, you know how they say, the people follow the animals or the food. When tidings of Daphne's discovery reached Europe, the church was appalled and slow to believe it. The church was like, nah, man, we already know that's the Holy Land. Nah, what are you talking about? You see this? See what they're saying here? It was unwelcome news. They don't know that's the old world. It was a fact for them already. It just could not be true. It could not be true. It did not coincide with their religious ideas, huh? What ideas? That America's the true Holy Land. The religious ideas that they had conquered the true terrestrial paradise. Popol Vuh, right? Manifest destiny. That there could be a world within a world. Seemed utterly unbelievable. It was an attempt, they thought, to deny the sacred teaching that all living creatures had migrated from Ararat and been scattered throughout Asia, Europe, and Africa. They're like, no, it can't be. Everything came from Asia. Because this is Asia. You get it? It still goes with the whole story. It's just we're missing context. We're missing context. The religious conscience was not willing to accept it. They ain't ready to let go that America's the true old world. Listen what they're saying here. Frequently that which we do not desire to believe is rejected. Historians inform us that for many years, Devshnu's voyage was regarded as fabulous. They didn't believe him. They said, nah, man, this is Asia, man. How you think we got our horses and camels and everything else, man? What are you talking about? They has to have been connected. That's why see what I'm saying. See how the people are thinking at that time, right? Like, what you mean, man? The human mind was not ready to receive such a revolutionary idea after being taught otherwise for so long. Thought what? Thought otherwise that America was? What did this? Was Asia? Was India superior? Notwithstanding the unbelief and the opposition of the clergy of that day, the record of Deshnu's warriors was substantiated and had to be believed. Here was a detached continent with an independent existence. Believe it or not, Dephnus was execrated. The admiral of the ocean seas had unwittingly found an undreamed of western hemisphere lying between Europe and Asia, a separate unit of the earth entirely severed from the rest of the world, severed for sure. By sundering seas, north, south, east, and west, yeah, the waters went up. A transmarine world in itself, a continent stretching from pole to pole, wide as the Atlantic Ocean, inhabited by millions of people, and alive with every species of wildlife. It is very true. It is very true the breezes of Atlantic had wafted them into a sea of islands, utterly unknown, and the almost divine voyage had revealed the existence of a formerly hidden world, as large as Europe and Africa combined. A hidden world with the hidden ones were, right? The hidden ones. Do I have to show you the etymology of Hebrew? Those first mariners had not slightest conception of the world's significance of their achievement. The Santa Maria had butted into an intervening world, a continent midway between two oceans. How could Columbus be expected to know of its existence? Of course he did. Remember, he met Indians in 1470. He knew, he had the maps, he had everything. We dodged the hijack with this part, right? Or to be aware that from San Salvador to Asia's nearest shore there yet intervened a distance of 9,000 miles, more than twice the length of the journey he had traveled. Though Columbus was never to know it, his epic making voyage was to lead. He came, where he wanted to come. That's where he came, and he never said he never arrived where he wanted to, guys. All right, that's very important. Show me when he said, "Oh, I never found Asia." I'll wait. All the inhabitants of the known Earth of that day sparsely occupied only a quarter of the area of the globe. The voyage of the Genoese, in parentheses, right? See how this author knows? See how this author knows that he's not a Genoese? He put parentheses. So Columbus' real name again, Salvador Fernandes Sarco. That's his real name. He was a Portuguese Sephardic Jew, so-called black man, not an Italian. That's why they put it in parentheses. So they know stuff, right? Was to result in the discovery of areas large enough to rich enough to furnish accommodation and sustenance to all mankind then dwelling on the earth's surface. It has been estimated that even all of the people living on its bosom today could easily be provided for in the new lands if the old world should suffer the fate of Atlantis. If the old world should suffer the fate of Atlantis. This is the old world, and it did suffer the fate of Atlantis because this is Atlantis. It's all subliminal talk here going on here. Truly, as one has said, the discovery was a revelation more divine than human. More divine, of course it was divine. Again, we're being subliminal here. Perhaps it was well that this stupendous fact was hidden from him. Such glory would have been almost too much for one mortal. Which again, he literally wrote in his book of prophecies that this was a divine plan he was following. He literally believed he was following God's plan to come to the true Holy Land and meet the Grand Khan and reconquer the holy city and Mount Zion. He wrote that. He literally wrote that he was coming to conquer Jerusalem. He wrote that. Had the great Christopher known that the shores he discovered were not the coral strands of India, all right, again, dodge the hijack, and that the individuals who carried back with him of Europe were members of a new distinctive race, he would naturally have been more elevated even than he was. He brought back who they were expecting. Could he have guessed then stupendous truth the illustrious discoverer would probably have called the new land Colombo? All right, now they're talking something else. When the startling tidings of the magnitude and uniqueness of the new land began to be digested in Europe, there was wonder and consternation. America wasn't as isolated part of Asia, but was transmarine world in itself a secret, populous continent, distinct and separate from the rest of the earth, and above all to the Spanish, a land of gold and jewels. Gold and jewels. It was the most stupendous event of history. Again, it was the most stupendous thing that ever has happened in history. They found America. El mundo nuevo, that's the hijack, or new world, but it's the old world, right? The words were on the lips of every Spaniard, and soon they were being repeated in every civilized tongue. The romance of the unknown, the allure of the exotic gripped the minds of men everywhere. For the first time in Earth's history, the end of the rainbow had been found. Listen, listen, again, it's all subliminal. The end of the rainbow, the pot of gold, right? They found the terrestrial paradise. They did find India Superior and Cathay. They did. They literally keep contradicting themselves. The end of the rainbow, the pot of gold had been found, and a pot of gold awaited the taking. Thus was America brought in. No longer was she an orphan hemisphere. We were never orphans. Yeah, the orphans. We were never orphans. And from the hinterlands of space, out of the ages primeval, there had emerged another ethnological section, the American man. The new land was not a new eastern portion of Asia, as for 150 years it had been supposed to be. It was supposed to be. It was. The mainland of Asia was not just around the corner, right above face. So they're saying, picturing in 1950 what he thinks Asia is, right? That's what he's talking about. Of the magnitude of the land of his discovery, Columbus was ignorant. Oh, no, he wasn't. He definitely knew where he was coming and what great of an impact it was. And it literally, it was for him too. Like he knew. He was one of the greatest cosmographers of his time. Data were from to arrive at correct conclusions were entirely lacking in Columbus' day, all right? He knew where he was going again. He was a great cosmographer. He wasn't lost. You're contradicting yourself. You see? We reserve our scorn for those who in this enlightened age still dwell in the darkness of the 16th century and ignorantly accept its decisions. Okay, now that's a big one right there. Who's still going off old data? Or concepts from the 16th century is what he means. Things that were decided in the 16th century. Oh, these are savages, right? Oh, they call the Indians devils. That's 16th century decisions. That's what he means. Columbus had blundered onto a continent whose identity he never learned, a land thickly inhabited by people and animals like Europe or Asia or Africa. Or Africa. Or Africa. Again, I told you it's all subliminal. This author, I'm starting to peep. I'm starting to peep. He throws it in there real quick. The lights he had seen were kindled by people of another world. They were not the lights of Asia. The island of Guanahi was part of another hemisphere inhabited by the red men. Adam, red men, huh? Adam? You mean Adam, like in Hebrew? Adam, red man. Adam. Oh, the original. Oh, okay. A new race of mankind. A new? Just like it was a new world, right? Yet they don't know who they are, right? Like Drop says, right? Con Drop. Shout out to Con, right? He says, if they can't tell you who they are, how can they tell you who they not? Those strange islanders to whom the Spaniards gave Hog's Bell were of a different branch of humanity, up still that time unheard of by either Europe or Asia. But you guys understand, he's gonna have a real good point. He's basically he's trying to get to a point. So I see why he's doing this, right? He's saying, oh, he's trying to separate it from Asia, what we think of modern day Asia. So you'll see why. Because he's gonna tell you. Eventually, I mean, I'm gonna drop it, I'll spoil it, but we're gonna read it anyway. He's gonna tell you these are indigenous people to this place, not coming out of Asia. Watch. So it says the voyage of the great admiral had brought together two streams of human life, which since their rise had flowed in separate channels. A sublime discovery giving him a glory enduring as the world itself. This is not the story of how Spain added to her dominions half a planet, amazing and breathtaking as was that epical achievement, but of the still greater marvel that by such discovery, another ethnologically distinct race of men was found. All right? He's trying to tell you, watch. The real romance of America is that through the Genoese, through the Portuguese Jew circle, right? Weaver of dreams of fourth divisions of genus homo, not theretofore known, even in legend, was found. Known only to God, those copper-colored people, copper-colored people, copper-colored people, copper-colored people. They said the red man, huh? I told you they were talking about copper-colored people, right? Or copper-colored people, right? Or, you know what I'm gonna say? Americans. Webster's 1828 dictionary. A native of America originally applied to the aboriginals or copper-colored races, found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Copper-colored races. Portuguese Sephardic Jew Columbus found the copper-colored people. Copper-colored people, huh? Copper-colored people come in many shades, including what you try to call so-called black. Of what we know as America, the copper-colored people that dwelt in America, in their own world, known only to God, to the Most High, His hidden ones, to the Great Spirit in their own world, the copper-colored people, all unconscious of the fact that across the billowy oceans which shut them in there dwelt other mortals similar to themselves, though unlike them in many vital respects. We have been requested to write a human interest story. Was there ever a story better answering to such a description than that of these people brought from the nowhere into the here? They brought from the nowhere into the here. They just came out of nowhere. They just popped out of nowhere. They just found these people here. They just found you here, my copper-colored people. They just found you here in the Holy Land. Shout out to Drop, man. And the terrestrial paradise, man. And these Edenic islands, as I said earlier, as observed by Fisk, there is something solemn and impressive in spectacle of human life, thus going on for countless ages in the eastern and western halves of our planet, each all unknown to the other and uninfluenced by it. You know, we dodged the hijack because they were. See, the ancient people knew of each other, guys. To them, it was a surprise. So long as the lands discovered by Columbus were this, again, he can't discover a land when there's millions of people already, like you said, they were already there alive, on separate. He didn't discover nothing. He invaded. They were what considered to be outer parts of Asia. The question of the inhabitants there found had presented no difficulties. They were no doubt Indians on their own mother continent. Those copper-colored people, known only to God in their own world. No, they were no doubt Indians on their own mother continent. That's all I'm trying to show you here. But now that they newly found land would seem to have no connection with Asia, yeah, modern Asia, another theological difficulty arose while the matter of the earth being a sphere or being a flat surface was still in dispute. Oh, they're bringing their globe hijack too during the same time. What a coincidence that the same time they're finding the true old world, invading the American Indians, they come with their Christianity and their globe hijack. Did not the Bible teach plainly that God had created one pair of all forms of life in the Garden of Eden? How then had men and animals reached that far off continent in the middle of two oceans? How did they do it? What animals? Oh, you mean like the camel? The camel originated in North America. What animals? Oh, like the horse. Oh, what animals? Like the lion, mammals, cats, dogs, elephants. All that originated here. We've proven it. So that's why we dodge the hijack sometimes in this book. They're still, right? But he's making a point. How could there be animals here? How could there be people if everybody came out of Asia, basically, is what they're saying. If eating was over there in Asia, if eating is over there in Iraq, is basically what he's saying. How can we have our own stuff? Not knowing, right, that those animals they're looking at right there in 1950, not knowing, this guy not knowing that all those animals he's talking about originated here in the Americas, right? Not knowing, right? How then could there be animals, man? Moreover, said continent was literally teeming with life. Not only that, there's so many animals here, as populous as any other continent. Conceivably, birds and insects might have flown there, but the beasts of the field surely could not have crossed that stormy waste of waters, dared only by the intrepid Columbus and his men. Stern facts confronted them, presenting problems to which there seemed no solution. Curiosity was unbounded. They're like, how the hell did all these people get here and all these animals? How do we explain this? We don't know. We don't know. How had such fullness of life reached the far off shores of another world? Another world. The source of origin of its inhabitants was a more perplexing problem. And if they can't tell you who you are, man, if they can't tell you who you are, how can they tell you who you're not, man? Con drop. Shout out to Con drop. In the words of Prescott, thought by their faith to derive all created beings from one source, they felt a natural perplexity as to the manner in which these distant and insulated regions could have obtained their inhabitants. The same curiosity was felt by their countrymen at home, and the European scholars bewildered their brains with speculation on the best way of solving this interesting problem. What an interesting problem. Pope and prelates were sorely perplexed. The wisest men in the world, guys, were perplexed. They didn't know. They were so perplexed. Here was a dilemma indeed. Who are these people? These copper-colored people. Those copper-colored people. Who are these copper-colored people? What a problem. How had life reached that land? They've seen it in reverse. That's why you can't see. In the monasteries of Spain, many a learned discussion took place relative to this vital topic. It was most assuredly a staggering dilemma to the church, a perplexing question which how be answered somehow. Must be answered somehow, sorry. The next 100 years was a period of great material gain, but also of corresponding spiritual loss for the church that inevitably happens. Another kind of humanity had been discovered. They knew, man, the whole time, though, guys, especially the church. The church knew about the four parts of the world. We've gone over this in previous videos, and many people on YouTube actually have. Living on a separate and distinct continent, severed from the rest by rolling seas. Some began to deny the teachings of the Holy Rite regarding Noah and his family. Now everybody's all confused. Well, what do we know about Noah's ship, guys? What do we know about Noah's ship? Made out of gopher wood, right? Where does gopher wood grow? Where does gopher wood grow? Hey AI, where does gopher wood originate? Okay, gopher wood, said the AI, commonly identified with the Florida torreya, primarily grows in the southeastern United States, particularly in northern Florida and southwestern Georgia. It is rare and endangered conifer found along the Apalachicola River region. Okay. Oh, in the Americas, huh? So gopher wood. Gopher wood. Oh, look what we have right next to it. Look what we have right next to it. Gopher wood, right? Gopher wood. What does it say here? Gopher wood is a term used once in the Bible to describe the material used to construct Noah's Ark. To construct Noah's Ark states that Noah was instructed to build the Ark of Gopher, commonly transliterated as gopher wood, a word not otherwise used in the Bible or the Hebrew language in general. Okay, gopher wood, where all the animals, huh? He got them all in the ship, huh? Made it out of gopher wood, when gopher wood is only found in the southeastern United States and some parts of Brazil. But they probably brought it over there. All right. Okay. So let's go back to the book. They're saying they were starting to disregard the Noah story. Yeah, because you're seeing it in reverse. Truly, the Inquisition was required. Men's eternal welfare was more important than all the wealth of material content, and however vast in the Holy Office was kept busy. Shocked at the very idea of there being a world of human beings out of a reach of salvation. Listen, certain of the clergy wrote to then Pope denouncing some of their brethren who considered such possible. The Pope of that day thereupon declared to this be heresy and censured all holding such as dangerous doctrine. They weren't letting it become a public thing. They didn't want people to know there was a fourth world, guys, that the America existed, because it would go against their false narratives of the church and people would start believing them. They called it dangerous doctrine to teach about the Americas being a whole new world or a whole other continent apart from them. In 1655, one Isaac de la Parade, Sephardic Jew, Isaac de Parade, Perry and Pereira are the same family. Perrys and the Pereiras are the same family, published a commentary on the pre-Adamite hypothesis. So in 1655, he declared that Adam was the progenitor of the so-called Jewish or Hebrew, right? Hebrew or Israelite people only, and that the deluge was only partial. Huh. The deluge only partial, huh? His reasonable interpretation of then existent impasse gained for him many secret followers, but the book was banned. Ah, and his author fell under the animadversion of the Inquisition. Wow, he got murdered. Sincerely or otherwise, he recanted and retracted his errors. It frequently happens that the layman free from teachers who inject their own interpretations. Teachers who inject their own interpretations reads the book plainly as it is written. Medieval exegetes then as now read into the text of the scriptures much that the authors never intended to convey, as we shall see in a later chapter. If they had read Pereira's book, which notwithstanding its being banned by the church was the true teaching of the scriptures, all the anxiety would have been over. Poring over those quaintly worded 16th century tomes, we know their questionings, but there is a strange lack of surprise that animals should have been found when they believed that all life was not only God created but ark preserved. Why is there animals here, right? Why was their wonderment confined to human life? That living humans were there was so utterly perplexed them. They do not seem to have been disturbed by the discovery of lower forms of life. Some of the ecclesiastics leaned to the opinion that angels had superintended the distribution from the ark on Mount Ararat to various parts of the earth, when others pointed out that only one pair of each species had been preserved. The distribution was placed at subsequent date. That conclusion was pretty generally accepted. Heavenly hosts with wings celestial served as airships to convey them thither, airships, and highly imaginative pictures were drawn of the voyage. A magic carpet pulled by angels was quite within the realm of credibility. Did they not believe that the moon and the stars were carried about by angels? So this is what they were trying to explain, how there was animals here. The angels brought them. They was trying to explain that to people, guys. Those who may doubt the ability of medieval artists to portray such marvelous scenes should glance through the pages of Dante's Inferno. They might be short on technique, but they were long on imagination. And that's why you see all these crazy drawings and a lot of these old books, like there's the one from John Ogilvy, right? And Montanus. Even in those dark days of credulity, however, there were those who doubted not the ability of angels to serve as celestial airships, had they not always borne the faithful dead to mansions in the skies, but the why and wherefore of their also taken so many wild animals and nauseous insects, which latter so troubled the pious explorers, was puzzling to the ninth degree. Although Spain had no unbelievers in religion, the nation had always been strong in religious faith. Nevertheless, it had many dubious ones who were not able to swallow the angel theory. So this is again, I told you, this is what they were trying to tell people, because people say, "Yo, but Mr. Priest, hey, but how? Why is there animals in America if Noah landed in Asia? Why is there people there?" So they say, "Oh, the angels brought them over there." So a lot of people's like, "All right, yeah, right." The Bible story just had to be vindicated. How could God's one pure creation be found on a separate and isolated world? How did they reach there? St. Clement in his epistle to the Corinthians had written of other worlds beyond the ocean. I told you they knew, guys. This is what I'm saying. And St. Augustine had penned the words, as by God's command at the time of the creation, the earth brought forth the living creature after his kinds, so a similar process must have taken place in islands too remote to be reached by animals from the continents. They try to explain it so bad. All these bears and moose, yeah. These early fathers of the church sometimes alluded to the faraway begotten, whom they imagined to be existent in regions then unknown. The hinterlands of the earth always held mystery for the ancients. The words of Christ, they say here, that's the hijack, other sheep I have which are not of this fold, were frequently dwelt upon in that connection. So, we understand the deep meaning behind that right there, that verse. Those early fathers in St. Augustine, however, had lived in a freer age when men were permitted to think. Now the church frowned upon independent thinking as heterodox. You can't think for yourself. They didn't want you to know the truth about the true old world. You can't think about America like that. Outer, yep. Outer lands. Not mythical, right? Outer lands, right? Great indeed was the relief to the clergy when in 1742 the thrice welcome news reached Spain that one Baron, a Danish captain, though homologating Deschnew's discovery that America was a separate continent, had found that in two extreme outjutting capes, Asia came to within 50 miles of America. Only 50 miles, guys? You see, that's not a lot, guys. They was connected. But in 1640, look, no, not even. In the 1700s, they're just finding out they're saying it's not Asia. They thought it was Asia the whole time, since all the way to 1700s. You guys paying attention? Because it was made Asia Major, India Superior. Then the hijack and the separation did happen. It would seem, remember, there's still maps of California as an island, even in these times. So the lands could be different too. It would seem that Defnus had hugged the Siberian shores and had not sighted the Alaskan coast through the dark tempestuous waters. Spain was quick to acknowledge this new discovery, and the welcome news soon spread throughout Europe. Sight was now allied to faith. They now saw a way out of the dilemma. The land of Ararat and the newly found America were in juxtaposition. That was without answer opportunely demonstrated. See, so now they can add their hijack. They were happy that oh look, it's kind of close. So now we can actually still say that it came from the other side. Now they can add their Bering Strait theory and hijack. So they were happy now. They couldn't explain it before. Now they got a so-called reason why there was people here. It says across the strait, all life, humans and animals, had crossed from Asia. Yet we know the truth, right? It's in reverse. Camels originate in North America. Horses originate in North America, and so on and so on. Gopher wood identified in Florida. Gopher, it's so many things we've shown. I'm just showing little examples here. Seeing it in reverse, right? How much this discovery contributed to the bolstering? Listen, Listen, he's about to get deep, I think. He said, how much this discovery contributed to the bolstering of belief in the distribution of all mankind from Ararat can scarcely be imagined now, meaning from Turkey. They named that modern day Ararat, right? Those were times when religious thought was paramount, although the ethics of conduct might be divorced therefrom, as was so clearly the case in the lives of the conquistadors. There was even some thought of canonizing Bering. They were so happy they had a way to explain. They're like, oh, we can say it was from there. Yeah, yeah, it's not that far. Under what circumstances he had seen the American coast and what difficulties were involved in the discovery were unknown and considered of minor significance. It is to be hoped that the Pope liberally rewarded Bering's crew for their fortunate finding of Asia so close to America, so that all the birds, beasts, and creeping things, as well as man, could have their way thither from Ararat. See, they have a way to try to add their hijack from Asia, right? Bering Strait hijack. In their zeal to uphold the supposed teaching of the Holy Rite, the red man just had to be a yellow man. Woo, body bag for the illusion. Oh man. Even though yellow man is a hijack too, because a lot of the Indians, so a lot of light-skinned black folks are yellow men. They were referred to in a lot of historical writings like that. But we got the drop many times already. So, but we know what he means, right? We get it. Yeah. Now he went from the red man to the yellow man. Because the holy rite, religious. If the glad tidings caused no excitement in Asia, it did affect the thought of Europe. Above all, it brought cease from anxiety to the man of the cloister. Light shone out of the darkness. It was the salvation of the church. Oh, now they can add their hijack. To the clergy, Asia was the sole mother region. The solution of the problem must be one that would produce accordance with the biblical narrative. So now, what was supposed to be a natural, feasible way had been opened up. So now, look, they're all happy, and this is the hijack they taught all of us, right? That the Americans came from Asia through the Bering Strait. But why couldn't they think of it in reverse, right? The same. Why did they have to be from that side? Because you said, because they're going off a biblical tradition. Noah landing in Ararat. So a lot of people try to say, hey, why you always, you're talking about Bible stuff and religion. I'm like, nah, man, all of history goes back to the Bible. Most historical things go back to biblical scripture, eventually. Test it out. If it's not through science and they try to relate to people, it's going to go back to biblical stuff. So it says animals and man were in the new land, therefore they had gone there by some route. Of course, they went from Asia, of course, right? Of course, naturally their route would be Bering Strait, of course, right? Of course not. Of course not. Because you've seen in reverse. About 6 million years ago, camelids began to move westward across the land that connected Asia and North America. West, the other way around. The other way around. Camels originated in North America. Just like horses. Just like horses. And gopher wood is from Florida. Naturally, yeah, it was the Bering, so-called the Straits of Anion. That's what we call it. That was incontestable, yeah, incontestable. Incontestable. Science proves it. The earliest known camelids, the protolopus and the proprotin range sizes comparable to modern hares to goats. They appeared roughly 40 million years ago in North America savanna. Over 20 million years that followed, more than a dozen of the ancestral members of the family kind of grew, developing larger bodies. All right. Around 25 million years ago, two tribes of camelids divided. The Camelini gradually migrated north and west, and the Lamini drifted south. Right. Okay. We got the drop in our own camel video. In those days of geographical ignorance, when more than half of the world was still unexplored, right? They hadn't even gone to Palenque. They haven't even explored nothing, right? The idea seemed plausible, and the solution was surely a welcome one, so accommodated and imagined. Across that strait by Ararat, India and China. Yeah, India superior, seen it in reverse. La China, huh? Columbus had described them as within walking distance and had declared that he was so close to Armenia that the Orinoco was one of the rivers that girdled Eden. He was right. The Orinoco, huh, coming from Mount Roraima, one of the ancient trees that was cut down somehow. This was the land of Ophir. This was the land of Ophir. Again, this was the land of Ophir, the place so long speculated on from which Solomon had secured his gold. Right here. Okay? The unthinking imagined that a natural entrance had been discovered and that the whole perplexing problem had been solved. Populous Asia could easily have given emigrant to a contiguous land. The journey seemed feasible. It was only a distance of 50 miles. So now they had, again, they're like so happy. But you see how close it really is even today, guys, like 50 miles? Wow. So by the sanction of his own will, the Pope in pronouncement decreed that the American natives, after scattering across the arc, had made their way into America by way of Siberia. Nope. If animals went that way, and this is the true old world, and the oldest land, and the oldest water, and the oldest civilization, and the oldest corn, and where the go through down there, you've seen it in reverse. Yeah, through the Straits of Anion. Through the Straits of Anion. As the lawyers would say, it was res judicata, judicata, huh? Judah, huh? Oh, I'm sure it was. A thing judged. The infallible pontiff had decided the question. The decision was both convenient and seductive. It ended 250 years of faith without sight. You see, now they can add their hijack. Yeah, they all came from Asia. That explains it. Okay, that's a case closed. That America was people from Siberia then became a religious dogma to be accepted along with holy right body back for the illusion. Shout out to drop, man. Con drop, man. It became what? Religious dogma, man. It became religious dogma, man. The pronunciamiento of the Pope, arbiter of all matters, scientific as well as religious, had settled the question just as definitively as though the route taken had been all marked with arrows and numbers. Yeah, you mean like this? Ah, like arrows and stuff like this, like they, oh yeah, like the camels were following. Yeah, it was automatic. Okay. Now the Bible had been vindicated in their minds. No other conclusion was possible or allowable. It was unchristian to hold any other view. So if you thought against that, if you didn't think that people in the Americas came from Asia, then you were not a Christian. It was all as surely settled as though the scriptures had stated the fact in so many words. None dreamed of trying to question it. It was a closed chapter. Case closed, man. They came from there. We felt it. Descent therefrom was out of the question. The Inquisition was functioning. The Inquisition was functioning. It was part of the Inquisitioning. It was decreed, and that ended the matter. Those were days when the theological question were more vital than life, and not infrequently involved a choice between life and death. Thus the whole question settled by the ecclesiastically minded, and many a sigh of relief came from the hearts of the devout. The reader will observe that the clergy did not arrive at this conclusion. They started from it. This was the only theory which would fit properly into the age of blind faith. It was a desired invention of anxious minds. All was interpreted according to their preconceived ideas. You see how it's all made up? He's telling you all this history they told this guy is all made up and cherished wishes. He's snitching on them. I told you he was being subliminal from the beginning. He's snitching on his own, yeah. Their minds being already conditioned by this pronunciamiento. And then was virtually put to all discussion of the subject, and it has retarded the progress of thought along these lines. Okay, it made people even slower. It made people think very, very unintelligently. It has delayed growth in wisdom and knowledge. It has retarded the progress. Most men have unthinkingly acquiesced indecision or acquiesced. Common acceptance and accepted usage have given it authority almost beyond question. It had the blessing of the church, but for its semi-religious origin, the thought would have died out generations ago had it not been made a part of their religion. It was an ecclesiastical solution, all right? It was part of their religion. It was part of their religion. Again, manifest destiny, just like manifest destiny, or the the, the conquest of discovery, right? Or discovery of conquest, right? It was an ecclesiastical solution, and such is all that theory ever had. It was a theory. Listen, he's telling you straight up all that it's all made up. So the whole point of him coming and discovering that's all made up. That's part of that. That's part of the Inquisition. He's literally telling him he should know that. He should be, look, he's contradicting himself with the whole Columbus thing right now, because he should know, if you're talking about that it's all part of the Inquisition, then that is part of it too, the whole Columbus discovery. That's all fake. They knew what they were coming, they conquered it, and then they changed the history. Avalon! Yeah, you already know. This is Sparta. It was an ecclesiastical solution, and such is all that the theory ever had. This is a plain statement of fact. Bringing the American from Asia, all right? Paper genocide, reclassifying you, calling you an Asian or an African, right? That part, listen, bringing the American Indian from Asia was the most colossal instance of baseless assumption known to history. Body bag for the illusion. Shout out to Drop, man. Nothing indicative of its rightness has ever been found. It is the most baseless assumption known to history that you came from, that every millions of people who all look different and speak different came from this little migration that you can't even prove. You have no proof of. It's all a theory, just like out of Africa theory. That's a theory too. Just like saying Columbus was lost. That's a theory when we know the truth. There is not now and never was any evidence, okay, to substantiate such a wild hypothesis as the one in question. No evidence, like I just said. I didn't even know I was about to read that. I didn't even know I was about to read that. I just said that. There's never been no evidence, and that's the thing nobody ever asks. All these scholars, all these professors, they talk about Clovis culture, which has been debunked. That was their evidence. That was their evidence. Clovis. And that has been debunked badly, and by now. They have found settlements 50,000 years old, 30,000 years old. They're digging all this stuff up. They had to rewrite that whole theory of 12,000 years, of 10,000 years of Clovis. That was based on, that was their evidence. And that had debunked. All right? There is no evidence. So such a wild hypothesis, such a baseless assumption known to history, okay? Thoughtful men are now rejecting such an absurd conjecture. In the 1950s, he's telling you that. He's like, yo, like, there's some people here who are really thinking about this. They're rejecting that theory. A later age and subsequent discoveries show an Asiatic pilgrimage to be uncalled for and only invented to satisfy the religious tenets of the Dark Age. Oh man, we're getting dropped right now. I told you he was gonna get. I told you he was being subliminal. I told you. They're trying to keep us in the Dark Ages, man, in darkness, in the spirit of stupor. They got you stupid, stupor. It was invented to satisfy the religious tenets of the Dark Age and to hide who you are. And to hide who you are, he's not going deep enough, right? Psalms 83, Populated, Yeah, the enemies. Yeah, go get all their kingdoms and principalities. Yeah, until different for perpetual servitude. Until different doms diversus. It is no better founded than the discarded angel theory. The belief came in only as a corollary, corollary from the Mosaic cosmogony and was thus acquiesced in from a supposed necessity, which no longer exists, which no longer exists. So now everybody forgot about why they had done it, and now we accepted it like it was truth, and now it's part of history. But it was all fake, invented religious dogma. It was a piously invented fable. It was an invented fable. The Bering Strait theory. Listen, man, like, man. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you guys enjoying the reading. Shout out to everybody in the live chat and live right now, listening. Hope you're enjoying. To quote the words of Conrad, it was the product of the medieval mind playing in its ponderous, childish way with the problems of our Earth's shape, its character, and its inhabitants. In the light of 400 years of discoveries made since the gallant Sarco, right, Salvador Fernandez Sarco, the Portuguese Jew, sailed westward, it is time that we graduated. We're in 2025. He's saying in 1951, man, we should graduate from that old way of thinking, from that hijack, from those lies. And I'm telling you, in 2025, why haven't we graduated from that? Why haven't we graduated from that in 2025, huh? It's time that we graduated. Since the discovery of so-called America, right? We have discarded the flat earth hypothesis, that's the hijack. We ain't spinning on no ball either. Worlds beyond the poles, huh? Terra Santa no longer has the Inquisition power to mold our thoughts. We ain't just believing anymore. We now know and dare to affirm that the earth moves, it's unmovable. It's in the firmament, it's in the Bible. It's unmovable. It's firm and unmovable. Everything moves around us. Why then should we cling to the Middle Ages notion as to the Indians' descent and birthland, huh? Why are they clinging on to Bering Strait and out of Africa theories, huh? Let's add that too. It is puerile to do so, as these are no longer tenable. There is nothing to go upon. There's no evidence of that. Why is that still in the textbooks? However, since that distant day when Spain once and for all time settled the question by deciding that the American Indian was an Asian immigrant, tradition, custom, and indolence of mind have perpetuated this ready-made hand-me-down decision. Like Henry Gay said, they're making it up anyways. Just say they're Asian, man. They're making it up anyways. Talking about they're in the true old world. They're making it up anyways. Ready-made hand-me-down decision, man. Has it in the last quadrennium been found that the alignment of the red man, again, remember what they meant? They meant those copper-colored people. We got that earlier, right? That's what he meant, those copper-colored people. And the Asian was sound. Though the reason, therefore, might be considered puerile, by no means, not one branch of science has ever set its seal to it. The first source of the ethic is still the sole origin, but traditions are apt to maintain their weight long after their authors are dust. So even though they created this fake fable history of American Indians being from Asia, and we still running with it, he's saying, the damage has been done. It hasn't been changed. The conclusion has survived the destruction of the premise upon which it was based, okay? It was a conclusion far in advance of the evidence, but oh, how persistent has been its continuance. The hijack continues, guys. It is now embalmed in religious concrete, religious dogma, in our beliefs. Hundreds of years of discoveries and sane reasoning have failed to dislodge the early claim. Hundreds of years, and I'm gonna even say in the last 8 years, so deep we've gone into this, and people still want to cling on to this early claim, right? Hundreds of years of discoveries, all the research we've done, insane reasoning, have failed to dislodge the early claim. Lo, the the poor Indian was given over to Asia. Damn. Through a fondly and incurably cherished pious idea. Man, he's snitching hard, man. He's snitching on his own right here, hard, man. You ever read a book go at the Bering Strait like this before? Never. I've never got, especially from 1950. I never read a book go so hard at the Bering Strait lie than this book right now, than this dude right here, man. So shout out to him back then, man. Even though he got a lot of hijack in the beginning of this video talking about Africans. Now it's only full of Africans. That's your own hijacks, man. But you see, he got dropped. He got some drop. Priestly pronouncements no longer are deemed the oracles of God. Today we think for ourselves, right? We're thinking for ourselves, right? No longer do hackneyed phrases satisfy the thoughtful. However, it must be admitted that the thoughts of the great majority of people are similar to those of the generations preceding them. Huh. They think like their parents, they think like their grandparents who were little lost, right? This is true right here. Yo, we've read this reasoning before, and I said this again. Like, yeah, a lot of us are still stuck believing when they were kind of suppressed with information, not knowing, understanding fully, right? The whole thing. Once a foolish phrase is uttered by someone, it is surprising how many sensible people will go on repeating it without rhyme or reason. Oh, are we from Africa? Oh yeah. Oh, our first ancestor. He was a king. He was a prince. He got kidnapped. He landed here in Georgia. He landed here in Georgia, right? Directly from Africa. One person tells you in a family reunion in the 70s and the 80s. Now what happens? You go repeating it without rhyme or reason. Apparently, if it's trite, it's right. If it's trite, it's right, man. It is a sad commentary upon our vaunted culture that some 20th century individuals are not even yet wholly freed from the so-called decisions of feudal times, but mighty indeed in the power of religious tenet. I'm gonna add Darwinism. I'm gonna add Darwinism to that. I'm gonna add that all Europeans are white. I'm gonna add that. You still believe that? I'm gonna add that if you're black or so-called Negro or dark skinned, that you have to be African. I'm gonna add to that. 20th century individuals are still, or 21st century individuals still stuck on that, on those old time feudal decisions. But mighty indeed is the power of religious tenet, right? Because it becomes like religion. Now it's a belief. Now it's out of Africa belief. You believe you're African. You believe in the false slave trade they told you about in Darwinism, and that everybody came out of one place. You believe now is religious tenet. Now it becomes a religious mind state. Now when somebody tries to help you, now we can't, because now you're like a religious person. You're gonna fight it to the end because that's your belief, not because you know, not because you can't prove it. History bears witness to the fact that it takes many centuries to rid men of religious notions. Tell me about it, man. That have become bone and flesh to their flesh, right? Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. Out of Africa, man. I'm FBA, man. We're foundational, man. We're still coming from Africa. Yeah. It takes centuries to rid men of religious notions, man, that have become bone and flesh of their flesh, man. That's a deep right there. That's so true. Baldwin writes, it is remarkable, however, to note that since the hagiologists of the Middle Ages settled the question to their minds by bringing the Indian from Asia, since they added that lie, right? The thoughtless have followed. The followers follow blindly, right? That fashion of thinking, all unaware of the amusing absurdity of it. It's it's a friggin' joke. It's crazy you believe that. It's crazy you believe you come out of apes. That's crazy. It's absurdity that you think you carrying a slave master last name. It's absurdity. Is Walter Lippmann right when In his preface to Morals, he asserts 90% of men are sheep. Yes, I would agree with Mr. Walter Lippmann. He got some drop right there. We gotta get that. See what he's saying, huh? Y'all are sheep. You're still following dogmas. We have dwelt on this pronouncement of the Pope at some length because at some length because it was the first, has been the only, and to many today is the final word concerning the Indians' ancestry. Dodge the hijack. We got genealogy and facts now. Many individual ethnologists have accepted it automatically, just as though it were a matter of history. They just accept this old lie. Many others have, by their silence, given consent, and the others are in it. The others are the gatekeepers, both black and white. It's not the white man only. It's not about crayon colors, man. Break out of that. History's not biased, people are. Many others have, again, with their silence, given consent to this fake history, knowing well their genealogy, talking about their African, knowing their genealogy, knowing that they're Indians, all these so-called black leaders from the past. Gotta keep it real with you, man. I know you got that love for them and stuff, and I know they did what they did, and Most High used them just like Cyrus, just like Trump, man. But it's still hijacked now as we look back, and we gotta learn from it. Or not, we're gonna end up repeating it. They give consent to it, okay? But observe that no body of scientists in any land has ever subscribed to it. But there's no evidence. We can and must excuse the general acceptance of this added by the early writers in a new land. Everything was supposed to be new. Everything was supposed to be new, but there's nothing new under the sun, bro. You know that? There ain't nothing new under the sun, bro. The decision was simply premature, man. It was at least conceivable that the few scattered people then supposed to be inhabiting the new land were emigrants, thither from somewhere, like those who began to flock there. But it is one of the puzzling things of the 20th century that millions who no longer accept the Pope's word as being vox dei, or the final word, right, or the geography of the 17th century as being accurate, still glibly assert that America was people from the Orient, as though it were one of the immortal verities, right? He's saying people still believe that, hijack, just like they still believe the out of Africa theories. This author recently met an instructor in one of our universities who very strongly believed the Indians came in by way of Siberia. Believe, right? Believe. He could not give any logical reason for his belief, though. He got no proof, man. In fact, he could not think of any reason. He just believed. Religious dogma. It is known, however, that behind him there are long centuries of strict religious teaching, which had become part of the man's life, though he did not realize this and doubtless would not have believed it. The utter ingenious, right, of some would-be thinkers is pathetic. It's pathetic. The positivism of those who merely accept heart beliefs is much more positive than is the head belief of those who have a reason for the hope that is in them. We believe what we learn by our hearts to believe. Heart knowledge clings tenaciously and is ever stronger than proof. Religious opinions are always more tenaciously held to than our facts. And that's a fact right there. You see, guys, this still rules us today. For the emotional nature of man, and then people get emotional, right? This is what I'm trying to tell you. You can't debate a Pan-African. You can't debate people who stuck on religious mind states, because they're gonna get emotional, because their emotional nature of man is ever stronger than the nature of reason. Okay, I hope you guys are hearing me. All the young folks, anybody's new here, break out of the spell. But millions of people do not know by whom and for what reason they were commanded so to believe. They don't even know why they believe what they believe. That's so true, man. Why do you believe what do you have for your beliefs to prove your beliefs? I don't know. I just have faith, man. They imagine it to be according to their own reason and their bias. The imitative may sing this refrain, but the understanding few do not. They smile instead. We're just talking Proverbs and Psalms here. The immigration from Siberia hypothesis isn't even a reasonable one today after our 400 years of evolutionary history. Bancroft remarks, the theory hasn't a leg to stand on. Bancroft had to drop. We read many of his books. He said they were, he said that a lot of the Indians are the lost tribes, man, and he said they ain't coming from Asia, so there has never been one scintilla of evidence produced in its favor. Clovis got debunked, man. Clovis got debunked years ago, man. The question has been proved for 400 years simply by not having been disproved. You get it? Because it was never real. Nobody has to try to disprove that because it was never real. That's the whole thing. They got us on this hijack to try to debate these nonsenses. You're trying to debate me on out of Africa theories and Bering Strait theories that are not real. I don't have to disprove you because it's not real. You get it, guys? This is deep. That's why I don't debate fools. That's entertainment and clout chasers. That's not a real debate. Your whole base is on a lie, a whole belief. The pathetic fallacy is as out of a date as the rush worm by Mr. Sarko Columbus. The from Asia hypothesis is defended only because it is a cherished religious belief. Man, drop after drop. Someone has written the error is too old, if not too respectable, to be corrected. It is sanctified by old age. Just because it's an old lie doesn't mean it's still true. Doesn't mean we got to keep it, guys. Why should we lump the Amerindian with the Yellow race? They mean the Asians over there, right, today, because of supposed and no longer cogent religious necessity, when such a classification does violence to reason. The pages of the much misunderstood book of Genesis have been quoted vehemently against the arrival of any other conclusion. Upon that decision, writers and speakers have builded, and unfortunately, only a few have paused to consider for themselves whether the 16th century conclusion was warranted, or whether there was or is any evidence whatsoever to prove it to have been a sound one. The author has traveled in every continent. He knows the Indians from Alaska to Patagonia and can corroborate the words of Catlin, who visited 120 Indian tribes and wrote, in the whole extent of the whole American continent, from Bering Straits to Tierra del Fuego, there is not to be seen a Mongol, a Kalmud or Siberian Tartar, nor a word of their language to be heard. Body bag for the illusions. And this is a body bag for all you guys who are prejudiced. You begin wanting to call people Mongols when there is no evidence what you think a Mongol is. America's a true world, and yeah, you're seeing modern migrations. You're seeing modern migrations of people you think came in ancient times. You assume Mongol meant great before the 1900s if you didn't know. Mongol meant great, or great empire. A Siberian Tartan, an Assyrian commander, you mean? Huh. Body bag, not to be seen a Mongol or a Siberian. That's your own hijacks. In this 20th century, the old theories and hypotheses are being debunked on every hand. And we debunking them every day, and we are looking into the source of ancient superstitions. Scientists have commenced to question this one and have sought to break away from the shackles of the old tradition. But the label of Oriental origin has been affixed to the Amerindians for so long that it is found almost impossible to pry it off, like the mud into which the Diplodocus sank, which afterwards turned into the stone and became part and parcel of the beast. It requires much shipping to this logic. Opinions become fixed when men stop thinking. Opinions become fixed when men stop thinking. Opinions become fixed when men stop thinking. As Dr. Hardlika truly avers, no physical proof has yet been found that the American Indian migrated from Asia by way of Siberia. And that's deep because he's supposed to be one of the founders of the Bering Strait theory. So how the hell does it contradict what he says? Now let us see why America could not possibly have been peopled from Siberia. It says, spirit of the frozen north, where the wave is chained and still, and the savage bear looks forth nightly from his caverned hill, down from thy eternal throne, from the land of cloud and storm, where the meeting icebergs groan, sweeping on thy wrathful form, spirit of the frozen wing, dwellers of a voiceless clime, where no coming off on a spring gilds the weary course of time, monarch of a realm untold, by the restless feet of men, where alone the hand of God, mid his mighty works has been, the hand of God and the people of God, huh? So if you're saying the hand of God, that includes the people of God, right? Because he created man too, right? He created man too. Again, Dr. Hickler truly avers there's no physical proof, right? That has been found that the American Indian migrated from Asia by way of Siberia. Let's just meditate a little. Hey, it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful time. It's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful time. I ain't got much to say else. I think everything has been self-explanatory what we read today. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Wow.